Hello everyone, thanks for joining me for this video on how to revise. I get asked this quite a lot at parents' evenings from students and parents asking me, what is the best way to revise? How should I be revising? How should my son or daughter be revising? So I thought I'd put this sort of presentation together. It's not going to give you all the answers and going to allow you to do perfect revision. It's just some ideas for how to go about sort of organising your revision and some different techniques that maybe you might not have heard of before. There'll definitely be some techniques on here that you have heard of before, but it's just to give you some ideas about some ways in which you can go about revising. So these are the 4 steps that I suggest you think about when you're revising. The first one's planning. The second one is actually doing the revision, so that's your action. The third is some sort of things to avoid, some pitfalls that I've seen some students down the years sort of fall into. And this one, the fourth one, reviewing. I think a lot of students forget about this, actually reviewing your revision. Has it been successful? If it's not been successful, then you need to change it. You need to do something else. So if you're in a habit of just reading over your notes for 3 weeks and your assessment scores haven't been particularly good, well, you should be reviewing that and going, well, that's a waste of time. I'm not doing it effectively. What should I be doing instead? So that's sort of the 4 steps. So plan, action, avoid, and review. So within the planning stage, there's 4 main things that I would think about sort of prior to starting your actual revision. Revision timetables, a to-do list, a PLC, and creating a study space. And we'll go through each of these in a little bit more depth. So revision timetables. Now, the person who's completed the revision timetable at the top left, it's a beautiful revision timetable, but I worry about how long did they spend putting this together. If they spend hours and hours putting this together, waste of time. You might as well have actually done some revision, and that's why the second step, action, is the most important, actually doing revision. If you spend between now and your exams just planning revision, well, you're not going to get any revision done. Also, my advice with revision timetables is actually they should be like a sort of active document that are updated on a, it could be a weekly, could be a fortnightly basis. So therefore, doing a beautiful revision timetable like that seems a bit pointless because you might be screwing that up and throwing it away after a week because things have changed. I'll put a link to the revision timetable in the bottom right, but something like that, print off 20 copies and then just scribble on them what you're revising when you're doing it for that week. End of the week, bin it, start a new one. That would be my advice for how I would have a revision timetable. Some of you might absolutely love Google or love computers, and you might want to put it onto like a Google spreadsheet or onto an Excel sheet. That's absolutely fine, whatever works for you. But have it in a way in which it's easy to make copies, it's easy to edit it, because you will want to change it. If you're doing 3 different A levels and you're doing brilliant in economics but terribly in psychology, then I would argue you want to weight more revision towards psychology because you're not doing so well in that. Again, with all of your different GCSEs, there might be ones that you need to do more revision for and less, and that might change during the year. My second part of planning is write out a to-do list. I love a to-do list, okay? I've always got a to-do list on my desk of things that I need to do, and it's just really motivational to be able to, tick things off or draw a line through them when you've done them. So that's something that definitely works for me. But, just like this person here, this is when they had 4 A levels, but they've just got, small little, they've not spent hours on this, and they've put, what they need to do, and they can just tick it off, job done. They might put down some of the topics they haven't revised yet and just some of the revision that they need to do. Up next is PLCs. This is something that's a bit new over the last sort of 2 to 3 years. And some subjects they might talk to you about PLCs on a sort of half-termly basis. So you might be really confident about what a PLC is, or you may have never heard of what a PLC is, and therefore you've no idea what I'm talking about. I'm going to go through it. So a PLC is basically a list of topics that you need to know for the exams, okay? And they're listed in a nice, straightforward way, not in complicated language, in sort of easy to understand student language, okay? And they're all laid out on the left. Then on the right-hand side, what you do is you rate yourself, okay? So usually you do green if you're really happy with it. It's really easy. You're happy. Amber, like orange color, if you're not, maybe it's been taught, you remember it, but you need to revise it. And then you might highlight something red if maybe you've never even heard of that topic, or you did it in class, but you really struggled with it. You would put it as red. Okay, this is really going to help you target your revision. We absolutely love, like when you're revising, to go over stuff we're good at. It's really easy to sit and revise stuff we know we're good at, and sometimes that's a pitfall for students. They will revise stuff that they're actually really good at. That is a complete waste of time. We do that because it makes us feel good, but actually it's pointless. It's just a waste of time, because if you're good at something, then that's most likely to be secure, and that's the last thing you should be revising. You need to focus on the stuff that actually you're not so good at, the things that are red and amber, and focus on revising those topics that are actually weaknesses for you. Now, these PLCs, I reckon 95% of subjects will have these somewhere. So speak to your staff, speak to your teachers, ask them about PLCs, about personalised learning checkers. Ask them, have they got them? Do they know of one? They might have already have made one. Even if they haven't made one, there probably is one out there on the internet for your subject and your spec. Okay, so speak to your teacher about it. If that's not the case, you can make one yourself, and it's actually a really good revision strategy to actually make one, because then you really get to understand the specification. And all this is the specification. So if you go online, go on Google, find out the specification, and just write in all the headings, and you can go and make one yourself anyway. So if your teacher hasn't got one, don't be sort of demanding that they make you one. Like, it's a good way for you to actually learn the spec by actually going and making a PLC yourself. Up next, create a study space. This one's a really, really difficult one. I put the one on the left as a bit of a joke, really, because nobody's got a study space like that. And to be honest, if you did, you'd probably spend most of the time looking out the window anyway, and you wouldn't get any revision done. So it's probably not that useful. But a lot of people's study space will look more like the sort of home on the right hand side. It's going to be a bit of carnage. There's going to be people everywhere. There's going to be maybe a dog running around. You might have a younger brother or your younger sister that leaves their toys everywhere. And it can be really a difficult thing to find a study space where you can go and have a bit of quiet and just get your revision done. And a few little tips, I guess, for that then. What you can think about doing is, if your school allows you to, stay a little bit later at school. I try not to take too much work home. I like to get my stuff done at school, because I like to have that separation between sort of work and home. And you might find that works for you as well. You can stay at school, an extra couple of hours after school. It gets quite quiet, after 3:30. You might be able to find yourself a quiet space that you can get some revision done. Obviously, just make sure that you've told, you're someone at home and a teacher that you're going to be there. Don't just hide in a little cupboard at school, because you might end up getting locked in. So just, speak to your teachers, speak to someone at home. It could be that the local library, you go and work there after school or at the weekend. But yeah, have a little discussion with your teacher, have a discussion with your parents. Think about, is there somewhere that you can, somewhere quiet that you could work? It could be that just, when everyone's in the lounge watching a bit of TV, you take yourself upstairs, or just somewhere else, so you've got a bit of peace and quiet, a bit of an area where you can just concentrate, because it can be really difficult when you've got lots going on at home. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to action. Okay, so this bit is basically the various different techniques that might help you revise. Some of these you might look at them and go, that is never going to work for me. What I would say is don't write something off straight away. You might want to give it a go. You might want to see it, and then you might go, oh no, definitely, but give them a go, because I think having a mixture of different revision techniques is good, rather than just relying on one thing. So each of these are going to go through in a bit of depth on the following slides. This is the classic, obviously, past papers and mark schemes. Get online. First of all, you must know the spec that you're studying. If you don't know that, speak to your teacher, find out what your spec is, because if you don't know that, you could be revising the complete wrong thing. So find out what your spec is, and then get online, download the past papers, print them out. If you haven't got a printer, just put them on as a PDF on your phone, on your laptop, and you can write the questions out, and then just get used to exam practice. And the second part of this is look at the mark schemes. What you don't want to do is, over Christmas, do 4 past papers, turn up the first day back after Christmas, and then drop 4 past papers at your teacher's desk, because they're not going to be too happy with it, okay? That we appreciate extra work, but not 4 past papers just after Christmas. But, use the mark scheme. You can it's a really beneficial tool to mark your own work. So fill in a past paper and try and mark your own work. And again, if you did a past paper and you'd marked 75% of it, and actually you took it into your teacher and said, look, I've given it a good go and I've marked as many as I can using the mark scheme, but there's 4 questions I just can't mark. Can you have a little look at it for me? They will be thrilled to have a little look at it, because they can see how much effort that you're putting into your revision. So that's past papers, mark schemes. You just need to find out what spec you're on, and then you can go on the website, download them off. Very easy. Up next, this is a bit of a weird one that you might not have heard of before, but basically it's something that's a bit sort of new to me. But a girl at my last school, she said that she was doing this revise with me, and then I saw it actually on the TV. I think it was maybe 6 months ago, and it was this person called UnJaded Jade, I think her YouTube is, and she basically just you revise with her. So she will do like a 2-hour stint, and she will, she's not talking or anything. She's just like, oh, I'm going to be doing this, this, and this at the start, and then she gets on and gets going. But you can have that on in the background. And, you feel, I guess, that you feel like you're not as alone. It's not as sort of, you've got a bit of support there because somebody else is actually going through it with you. And that's quite a nice way of doing revision, actually, because it gives you that motivation, because somebody else is going through it. And she'll pause her video at times to go and make herself a drink and things like that, encourage you to do breaks as well. But it's just, it boosts your motivation, it boosts your productivity, and it's just another good way of revising. So that's some of you might be listening to this and go, I am not doing that. That is not for me. Fine, just have a little look at some of the other things. But some of you might think, I've never thought of that. I'll give it a go, and it might just work for you. I think that for me, if I was back doing my GCSEs at A levels, I'd have loved to have done something like that, because I think actually sitting in a room with nothing going on can be quite, can give you quite a lot of anxiety. But if there's somebody else, be it on a laptop, that's also doing revision, they just feel a bit more like there's a bit more, a bit more of a team sort of thing going on. You feel like somebody else is actually doing some work as well. So it's, it might work for you, it might not. But again, let me know if you do that and it works for you. Drop me a little comment below. Let me know how you get on with it. The next one, obviously, I mean, all of you will know, you'll have done one of these in school, definitely at some point. Mind maps, but I just want to go into a bit more depth about mind maps, because sometimes I think they're not done brilliantly. That one on the top left, that I can barely even read. That is too much information in there. So you might want to think about, when you're doing mind maps, about how much information you're actually putting on the mind map. You might want to start off with a really detailed mind map at the top left, and then rewrite it out again in more concise form. And then what you might want to do is do it a third time, even more concise into topic areas. So you might want to look at sort of reducing the amount that you're doing. But again, every time you're doing that, it's helping you remember it. It's helping you contextualize. The next one's, again, another thing that a lot of you are going to be really used to is flashcards. Again, I've seen some really great examples of flashcards and some bad examples of flashcards. Try not to cram flashcards with loads and loads of text. They should be things that you're happy to pick up and read, relatively sort of easily. Shouldn't be absolutely bombarded with text on a flashcard. It should be short, sharp information. Just a little tip about flashcards. Flashcards can actually be really expensive. Just buy yourself some A4 coloured cards in either one colour or multiple colours if you want it for different subjects or different units. Buy it in A4 and just cut it into 4, and you've got yourself, here's £4.60 for 40 sheets. Well, if you're cutting it into 4, then you've got absolutely loads, 160 flashcards then. And if you buy 160 flashcards separately, you're probably going to be talking 30 quid. So save yourself some money, buy an A4 bit of cards, just cut it all up. measure it out, just keep it nice and neat, and that's a good way of doing things. Similar with the mind maps, you might want to start off with a bit more depth on your flashcard, and then you might write it out in a little bit less. They're really good for things like formulas. You can write the formula on the back, and then what the formula is being calculated on the other side, or you might do what the question is and then what the unit is on the back. Things like that you might want to do. You might want to do questions and just answers on the back, whatever works for you. Okay, this one I've got a bit more depth to this, because I think some students or more and more students are getting used to doing this because they are just using computers more. So I think typing up class notes, quite a lot of my A-level students like doing this just as a matter of practice. So they'll do their notes in class, but then they'll type it up just because they like their notes all typed up. That is a really good way of revising. You're going over the stuff that you've already done. You're doing it in a different way. So you're not just writing it out in hand and then writing it out in hand again. You're typing it up, which is a good way also for you to re-look over your notes and think about, right, what's important, what's not important. I've got a further tip for you here. It's basically an extended way of your PLC from earlier. So if, like, I've got these like student-friendly specs, and they're basically just a list of all the topics like the PLC, and then you write in your notes on the right-hand side. Again, some of your teachers might already have this, some might not. But again, this would take no time at all to put this together. It's literally just a list of the topics, and then you write the notes in that correspond with that. And then again, I've linked it into a little bit of to-do list. You can then tick off each section as you do it. That would be really useful for me because I'm getting constant sort of motivation that I'm getting things done, and it's also then helping me reorganize my notes and my revision, which is also good. This might be one that you've not seen before, but a revision dominoes. I think on a lot of this is sort of sciencey based, but again, you can use it for absolutely any topic or any subject. But basically, you can just put key terms and their definitions, or formulas, and then what you do is you connect the dominoes to similar topics. Okay. So I don't know, if it was business, you might have sources of finance, and then you might have a couple of examples of sources of finance, and then that might link to business plan, because you might find levels of or sources of finance on the business plan, and then you connect the dominoes up with similar topics. Some people it's a bit like a game. If you really want to push it even further, you could make them and then do it with some of your classmates that are studying the same subject as you. That might work for you. Up next is YouTube. This one you do need to be a little bit careful with, because one, obviously you need to make sure you know your spec quite well. You need to be careful that it's not giving you too much information. But for example, if you go on YouTube and type in tutor to you and then sole trader, it pulls up a video straight away on what a sole trader is. The problem is, if you're doing GCSE, you don't need to know it as in depth as this video. So you could be learning a little bit too much. But if you're just trying to find out a little thing, sometimes YouTube can be quite useful. Again, here there's a little bit of photosynthesis for A-level biology. You might want to have a little look at that. But again, you might want to check with your teacher about whether you think it's too in depth or not before you watch the whole thing and then learn too much, because that's not something you want to do really. I think getting towards the end of the suggestions, mixing things up, just doing different. I think having more than one way of revising is really good. So if you've done 500 flashcards, you might need to do something else. You might need to do a PLC. You might need to have a look at a couple of YouTube videos. That might be, just keeping things fresh, doing different things is going to help keep you a little bit more motivated to keep doing it. You need to keep it. It's never going to be the funnest, hour of your evening. It's not, going to be that. It's meant to be hard work, revision. But if you can try and mix things up and do different activities, it might just help keep it fresh, so you don't resent every second of doing the revision. Final thing then, don't forget work-life balance. This is really easy to say, especially at the moment, but more difficult to put into practice. But don't, forget about your friends and hide yourself away. Do think about, when you can, go to the cinema, meeting them up for a drink, whatever you do with your friends. do try and do that as best as possible, because that will keep you in tune. It will keep you motivated. And again, if you just stop doing all of that and just focus on revision, you'll just resent doing revision even more. Keep healthy. Keep, if you go for runs, or you do an exercise, or you play for a sports club, keep doing that. There's loads of science that shows that actually having a sort of fit body has a big impact on having a fit mind. So keep yourself fit and healthy as well. Again, talking about research, there's loads of research out there about things like meals that are high in fish and things like that, and actually that will help your it's just having a healthy healthy foods, a variety of foods. It can be easy when you're doing lots of revision to eat loads of chocolate and eat fast food and junk food, because that tends to be what you will crave when you feel like, I need a treat. Absolutely, you should be giving yourself a treat. If you've done a 2-hour stint, you've deserved a hot chocolate or whatever it might be. But it's everything in balance, isn't it? If you're constantly eating those sort of foods, eventually that's going to catch up with you, and you're not going to be as fit and healthy to continue your revision. Okay, so what things should we be avoiding then with revision? Just reading notes is. Some of you might absolutely love reading notes and know it works, and if it is, and you're doing really well in your test, great, just keep doing it. But reading notes is a lot of research that actually points out reading notes is one of the least beneficial ways of doing revision, because it's not particularly interactive, engaging. It's not a brilliant use of your time, and what you might find is you're spending a lot of time reading notes, but actually how much of it is sinking in. This was a classic sort of mistake, but watching TV and revising, you can't do both at the same time. It's just not possible. What you're better off doing is going and spending 20 minutes doing some solid revision away from the TV, just focusing on that, and then come back downstairs and put the TV on and watch the episode of what you wanted to watch, and then go back and do another 20 minutes solid revision. Trying to do both at the same time, you'll never be able to absorb a good amount of information while you're watching the TV as well. And that goes for phones, iPads. If you're not using it for education, laptops, all of that sort of stuff, you want to put all those distractions away. Put your phone on airplane mode, put it in a drawer, leave it with somebody else in the house and say, I'm going to come back and get this in an hour. Don't give it to me, whatever you do. You've got to do those sort of things just to try and, make that revision as effective as possible. That goes along with trying to find some sort of quiet space as well, because I've got a little dog. When I'm trying to do work, it can be quite difficult. He wants some attention and things like that, and before you know it, an hour's gone because you've been messing around, and it's just not productive use of time. You're better off just getting that revision done and then enjoy your evening, enjoy your time. Avoid negativity. And now, if you start doing more revision and you find some more successful revision, you might end up finding that some people are a bit jealous of you, and you might get, some negative comments because, you're doing lots of revision, you're doing really well in your test. I hope that isn't the case, but you might find that. But, I guess that's a consequence of success, isn't it, really? Friends saying that they're not revising, this is absolute nonsense. If people are telling you they're not revising and they're just randomly getting 9s and A stars, that is not true. They are secretly revising. These are not the sort of friends you want to be having. Okay, don't get involved in that. You do your own thing, you do your own revision. But people that say they're not revising, they're just magically doing really well, it's just not a truth. So just ignore that. Overdoing it. Okay, doing too much revision is really, really dangerous. It's that work-life balance, and you've got to get that balance. And it's not perfect. I've not got it cracked. I'm giving you some ideas here, but I've not got all of this, absolutely perfect. So you've got to think about it yourself. You've got to try and get that balance as best as possible. You want to spend time with friends and family, and go on your phone for a couple of hours if that's what you enjoy. Cool, but you've got to have that balance, and that's really difficult to manage, and it'll be something you'll be working on your whole life. But I guess it's best to start now, isn't it? Part-time work, yeah. this one's a real difficulty, because you might find at points within the year that your work want you more, and it's really tempting to work more hours because it's really nice to get a £200 pay packet at the end of the month. But that may seem like an absolutely huge amount now, but it's not worth you failing your GCSEs or A levels because you're working every hour possible. So what you might want to review is it actually worth a bit of short-term pain now of not getting any money and not working, rather than working too much and not having the grades that you want to get, or just stressing you out too much. So have a good think about that. I have had examples before where I've heard that a student has been working too many hours, and I actually called up the store that they were working at, and I spoke to the manager, and they said that I was concerned about the student working too many hours, and they ended up that they spoke to the member of staff, and they reduced their hours, because no business wants someone to fail their GCSEs or A levels. It doesn't look particularly good on them if they're forcing them to work, has actually put them in a difficult position. So it's well worth speaking. If you are in a job, go and speak to your manager at work. If you think that you're working too many hours, have a little conversation with them. You'd be surprised how amenable they're likely to be. My final step then, step 4, is reflection. This one is basically not really done a lot of the time, and actually it's really important. Revision is a cycle, but as a cycle, you can't forget that bit before you go back to the start of actually reflecting. You've got to think about what went well. What revision techniques work for me. If there's things that are working for me, I'm going to do more of them. If things are not working for me, well, let's stop that. Let's try and do something else instead. The second point in there, failure. We're so afraid of failing a lot of the time. Failure is brilliant, okay? Now, failing your GCSEs and A levels is not brilliant, but failing, your mocks, a mini assessment, whatever it might be, an exam focus in class, that's great, because what it tells you is that's an area of weakness for you and you need to sort it out. If you're constantly going through doing brilliant at everything, then you're never going to know what you're not good at. So it can actually be really useful to fail every now and then, because then you can look at what you're not so good at. So don't worry about failure. Failure can be a brilliant sort of constructive thing. And constantly review your PLC, your personalised learning checklist. You might want to do a PLC every half term. So you might want to do one every sort of 6 to 8 weeks. Just to see how you get on, because it will change. Because obviously the more you do revision, the more hopefully those ambers will turn to greens, the reds will turn to ambers, and therefore what you're learning will be improving. So anyway, there were some things there that you might want to think about. If you've got any great ideas for revision, please pop them in the comments below. That'd be really appreciated. But if not, best of luck with all of your revision, and I hope this helps. Cheers.